Maybe you want to double tip?
It's called the worry-free tip.
Worry-free tip. I'll stay worried.
Just the tip. Just the tip.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Bill can't help himself, everyone. We apologize.
You guys were probably wondering where the hell was the NerdNest podcast last week, and that's because we didn't record one. We just couldn't find time to get together because we're all old guys with families, and so we apologize for not having a show, but we're all here for this episode, and we're going to get started right away with what we've been playing. Carrie, what have you been playing this week, man?
So because we missed a week, I've been playing a few different things. I finished Call of Duty Black Ops 6 on veteran difficulty, and it's not as hard as previous Call of Duty veteran difficulties were. They have some like upgrade paths that just kind of make things way easier. So that was like, I would consider like kind of hard difficulty, but nothing like ultra difficulty. So that was a lot of fun. They had a lot of different things in there that I was not really anticipating. I haven't played a COD campaign in like so long because I have been avoiding like just getting them day one, and I was like, I'll get to them later. And it's always been like this backlog that I've never looked into. So there's a lot of different things that they've done there that I really enjoyed insofar as the variety of, they're like, no, this one is the stealth mission. This one is the open world map. This one is the thing. And I really enjoyed the variety of each mission. And I also enjoyed that they didn't let it just keep going on and on. So even on veteran difficulty, I was like 7.5 hours to fully complete, which is a fantastic runtime for a single player game for me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I'm also playing Metal Slug Tactics, which is kind of okay. It's pretty good. I'm still kind of going through it, but I don't think anything's ever going to have that same type of magic that Final Fantasy Tactics had. Final Fantasy Tactics, not only was it just a fantastic game in terms of strategy, but there was almost I want to say it's like a sense of story was so like important in Final Fantasy Tactics. Like when you were doing things, it felt like everything was like really important. Like, like you would see like the sprite characters like stab someone, and you're like, oh man, that was intense. Like there's like Game of Thrones, Final Fantasy type of stuff going on. And that game was insanely difficult, and I never actually finished it. Like it just got progressively harder, and whatever jobs I did was just the wrong thing, I guess. But I'm playing Metal Slug Tactics is, like that, but they try to have a story which I don't care about Metal Slug. Like what it was a cartoonish war game to begin with, so I don't know why they're so hardcore on a story. But yeah, that's the two games that I played lately.
How's the controller support in Metal Slug Tactics?
So I'm playing on Game Pass. So it's just the Xbox controller.
Nice.
Yeah, so it works. The tutorial section is a bit long. It's the first thing, and then just everything is like just another speed bump. They're like, oh, look at this. If you press in the left stick, you can do this. If you press B, it gets you out of that.
I did see a considerable amount of tutorialization in the demo, and then someone said that it's like Skyward Sword bad, and that was scary to me. I did like the look of the game. I played the demo. They didn't have good support. This was good support for controllers back like 4 or 5 months ago during the last Next Fest or the previous one. But it was fun. The tutorialization was a problem. But Final Fantasy Tactics, I have so many other good tactics games that I enjoy. There's Into the Breach. It's so good.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Mario and Rabbids is actually
Very
high-key amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a difference there with like regard to like Mario Rabbids, and then you can kind of go down the rabbit hole of even Ubisoft made some like offshoot ones like Shadow Recon. There was a 3DS game that was on a launch title for the 3DS, and that was a solid game.
Yes.
And it was a tactics, but it was very cookie cutter. You know what I mean? It's like, what does Fire Emblem do? Okay, let's just kind of do that, but we'll just slap on some of our, Tom Clancy stuff onto it. And there's like, it's kind of like that. And I feel like, so when I say Final Fantasy Tactics, that is like top shelf for me in terms of not just the gameplay of what you're doing and leveling up your characters and stuff, but also the story seldom do I care about a story of any video game until I start liking the video game. Like, I have to really like the video game and then be like, oh, I like this video game. Let me like figure out the lore of it so that I can enjoy it more.
Yeah.
And Final Fantasy Tactics from the get-go was so heavy in its story presentation that I was like, oh, let me actually pay attention to this because this seems kind of like, serious. Like they're treating this seriously and I want to pay attention to it. So there's like that. I don't really like video games that are just like, exposition. Here, read 5 paragraphs before you can continue. I'm like, dude, let me even see if I like the game first. So it's like, yeah, a little bit of that. But yeah, when you start talking about Mario Rabbids and stuff, which is great, it's fantastic. But it's also like, I don't know. I wouldn't say the story is anything that I cared about. I was just kind of going through.
Not at all.
Yeah, like the just the fun of the tactics part of it, right? Like that's what I enjoyed. And so I think that's the only reason why I bring up tactics is because Metal Slug Tactics is like presenting a story and you're just like, okay, like, all right, I guess you guys do you.
Maybe it'll turn out to be like one of the greatest video game stories of all time. If you can get past the tutorial. Speaking of the tutorials, I also played Black Ops 6. I've only like probably 3 levels into the story before I tried zombies, which seemed fine, but like I wasn't playing with friends, so I was like, nah, whatever. Then I did some multiplayer, and I found the multiplayer to be pretty good as far as, as far as like the gunplay feels good, the movement feels good. The maps are pretty small, so it's easy to learn the maps, I think. But the thing that drove me crazy about it was like I was just constantly getting killed over and over and over by like people who had special powers that I don't have yet because I haven't unlocked shit, and like they have better guns than I do. And like I get that like you want to have a sense of progression, but I hate the idea that my ability to compete is locked behind the amount of time that I have to put into the game. I would very much prefer if progression was, here's a stupid cape to wear, here's a dumb helmet that makes you look cool. Like that's the kind of progression in multiplayer games that I'm all for. But as somebody who has never played online Call of Duty games, except for whichever one was in World War II back on the Xbox 360, I think that's the last time that I played one. Yeah, where you would like spawn and then run and find like a Jeep or an airplane and you could like do all that stuff. Was that Call of Duty or was that the other
Battlefield?
Yeah, Battlefield. Thank you. See, so I guess I've never even played a Call of Duty until now. And I was like, I'm not sold on it. And everybody seems to love it. And everybody's saying great things about Black Ops 6. But I'm just like, it's not catching me. Am I wrong?
So, all right, I don't think you're wrong. I enjoyed the campaign and I haven't played any multiplayer yet, but there is, I would swear that there's a part of me that its inclusion into Game Pass is really tripping up my whole brain because it's like, this is like, a $70 billion purchase, but it's day one on Game Pass. And when I'm playing through it, like all the animations and stuff are really great. Like when you're going through the story and all the lip syncing is great and all of the animations are like top shelf stuff for a video game. But there is a thing where I am almost treating it to be of less value for reasons I can't comprehend that are affecting my ability to judge it. I still really enjoyed it, but I don't think I'm not like running away from this. I feel like it's a good game. Like if I was giving it a score, it'd be like an 8 out of 10. Not super fantastic, but hits all the beats. Very well done. Nothing outrageously bad, but nothing outrageously great. And that's where I felt where it was, you know what I mean? But I still enjoyed it, but I still feel like there's something that I feel perhaps I'm missing because it's not, mega blockbuster, huge, fantastic thing. So I don't know. I feel like I'm right there with you a bit. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that.
Call of Duty, I mean, like, this is speaking as someone who has not played since, I don't know, Modern Warfare 2, right? You get to Modern Warfare 2 speaking in terms of campaign, and like the notes that they hit are already like, you can't really top this without just being just insane, right? Like just sociopathic. The way some of those like scenes in the game, right, are just like, you can't top it. You can only maybe match it in the future. So, you know, what are we, like 16 Call of Duties later? Like, I can't imagine that they can top what they were doing back then, outside of like just graphical fidelity. And then multiplayer, that's interesting, your complaint, Bill, because I imagine you're correct, especially again just years later, right? But back in Modern Warfare 1, Modern Warfare 2, you would have that notion that like, oh, you're unlocking things and these things are better. But the more you play, you kind of go back to the original weapons that you had, and you're like, oh, these are actually really good weapons that can compete throughout the entire like leveling up progress. So I'm curious to see if any of that holds up for Black Ops 6, but it sounds like no, it's just pay to win.
Well, I wouldn't say it's pay to win. It's I have more time than you, so I'll probably win. But it's not necessarily that you're unlocking guns. It's like you're unlocking a suppressor for your rifle so that the bullets do more damage, or higher capacity mags, so you can shoot more without having to reload as often. And like, that's the stuff where I'm like, man, I don't have as much time as these other people do to play, so they're always going to be able to outshoot me before they have to reload. Yep. And that's a little frustrating. Russ, I know you've been playing Call of Duty, but it's a different one. Did you play this one at all?
Yeah. Well, in the way back, 2 weeks ago when we were talking about this last, Carrie was about to start up, Call of Duty Black Ops, and I was like, oh, I have Modern Warfare 3, which I never played, which came out last year or the year before. My wife's friend bought a PS5. Basically because she wanted better graphics with Hogwarts. And so she did that, but it came with Modern Warfare 3. So she gave me the code. And so I've had that game and I've already had it downloaded and everything. And I was like, instead of going on Game Pass and downloading and stuff, I'll just play that game. And so I did about 3 hours playing that. And that's like half the campaign, I think, because it is a very short campaign. I remember that being a complaint. But it's the same, it's just that same weight of Call of Duty, which I like. I like that kind of heft, as you're holding the gun, that feeling, just a little bit more realism to it. And so I'm enjoying it, but I will never touch multiplayer. I mean, I just get so nervous doing that stuff. Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a real person on the other end. Like, it just freaks me out. It's been that way since like Quake 3. So it's like, I just can't get over it. So
does that one have the slides and stuff? Like this one, you hit a button and you go sliding across the ground and you turn into aim at the same time. Do you do that stuff in that one, or is that new to this one?
There's always a little bit of a slide, but nothing crazy in Modern Warfare 3 at least. And that one's made by a different developer as Black Ops, so it might be a different feel. I've actually never played Black Ops. So.
Oh, okay. All right. So, Russ, you've also been playing Spider-Man. We got a Spider-Man update. Are you done with it?
Yeah, just a quick update on that. So I'm not done. I'm probably at 35%, but I'm still running through the campaign. I was mostly playing on my ROG NUC, which is like a almost $2,000 little mini PC thing that they sent over for review. And I was like, this is way too much PC for me, but I'll throw it into the living room. It chugs on Spider-Man. Like, it's all sorts of hitching and stuff, even at like 1440p, trying just to stay stable 60 frames and medium settings. I can't do it. I'm like, this shouldn't be this bad. Like, it's just a lot of hitching, and it's not enough to be like, oh, this is terrible, but it's enough to be a periodic reminder that it's annoying, So I switched over to my ROG Ally X in Bazite, 900p, I think 40 frames per second. And it fluctuates a lot, but you have the VRR and it is so much better. Like, I'm having such a better experience on my ROG Ally X than the thing that costs twice as much hooked up to my TV. And it was a kind of a profound moment for me where I'm like, this is actually better. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a console guy. I want to play on the couch in front of my TV, and I'm not. I'm going to actually play it on my ROG Ally in bed. And that was a better experience. So that was really good.
Very cool. Did you, Carrie, you also have the NUC, right?
Yes, for the Beeling?
No, the ROG NUC.
Oh, I do not, no.
Oh, okay. I must be thinking of Bob then, because I think I know two people that have one. I think Bob must be the other one.
Yeah.
Anybody else play any games? I know, Rich, you said NA, so I'm guessing you just were too busy these 2 weeks.
I've been too busy with work. My brain has been shutting off at the end of the day. So I have been watching a bunch of Netflix. I watched like almost through the entire Outer Banks, which is entertaining, just dumb fun. And what's the one with Kerry Russell? That one's fun. The Diplomat, I want to say something like that. Yeah, that one's good. It's a good one.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I come home and I sit down and I load up Call of Duty and I play 1 or 2 matches, and then I'm like trying to keep my eyes open while I'm playing. I'm like, okay, I'm not.
We should play zombies though. We should play zombies.
We should. We should, like, after we get done talking, we should write down when we're gonna friggin' do this, because we said that last week and then we never did. And then I think I was talking to Russ and I was like, oh yeah, we got to play zombies, and he's like, oh yeah, we do. And we never do. So
Right.
I have really good fond memories of when like zombies was like first big on 360, and I'd play with my brother and friends, and we'd go like 20, 30 waves deep. And by the time that happens, we've been playing so many times that we've like developed a thing where like we run to this like last hallway, and we would position ourselves where we would like 2 guys would lay prone, 1 guy would be crouched, and another guy would be standing, and we just have this wave of bullets coming out and shooting. And we would like time our reloads so that we could constantly just have bullets firing. It was so much fun that like that's the thing that I miss. And then they started doing like, zombies where there was like an ending to it, but that was like super hard, and you had to be like way elite in like doing zombie stuff. Still, I really enjoy zombies a bunch. We totally should play it.
don't expect that kind of coordination from me. I'm not that good.
Oh yeah, I just enjoy it, and they've done kind of, I want to say almost like there's a battle pass inside of the zombie stuff now, and then they have the mystery box. So those like things that like became more and more prevalent. The Juggernaut and all the other stuff that you can get from the vending machines to like boost your power and stuff. So it's all in good fun.
Yeah. All right, I guess so we move on to the news. We've got a bunch of different topics to talk about today, and I want to start off with confirmation from Nintendo. It is now confirmed. This comes from Nintendo's official Twitter. They said, this is Furukawa. He's the president of Nintendo Japan. He said, at today's corporate management policy briefing, we announced that Nintendo Switch software will also be playable on the successor to the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Switch Online will be available on the successor to the Nintendo Switch as well. Further information about this stuff will be announced at a later date. So, is anybody here surprised that it's backwards compatible?
Not even a little bit.
No,
Yeah, but I don't
not
like this wording though.
Oh, okay. Talk more, Russ. Why don't you like this wording?
The Nintendo Switch software will also be playable on the successor. Does that mean eShop purchases, or does that mean cartridges? You know what I mean?
Oh.
That's what I'm worried about.
I anticipate cartridges.
Me too.
Me
I
too,
think
yeah.
that you look at the DS and then the 3DS, and what they did in order to make it so you couldn't accidentally put a 3DS cartridge in a Nintendo DS is they had a little extra tab on the thing. I think that's probably what they'll do here. What do you think about that, Russ?
Yeah, I'm hoping so, but it's just not explicit. And when there's space like that, I'm like, oh man, the old switcheroo. It's like, I'm worried about that. They don't have a good track record of keeping long-term software integrity going. So I'm just a little bit worried about that on my own. So
they're kind of hit and miss, right? So like GameCube to Wii backwards compatible, right? Like we could play GameCube, Wii U could play Wii. I don't believe it could play GameCube without being modified, if I recall correctly.
I don't think that you could put the little discs in. No,
you could if it was modified, but
right. But if it wasn't modified, you would not be able to get the disc back out, right?
I don't remember if you can get it out or not. Yeah, and maybe you're right. Maybe I didn't once it was modified. Maybe it was just out of the hard drive. I just played the ISOs, so I don't really recall. But the software was capable of it, right? And then handhelds, there was GBA to DS backwards compatible, DS to 3DS backwards compatible, and then just Switch is just brand new, right? So like it kind of broke that. So there is some history of it. I think they'll play the Nintendo Switch cartridges. They certainly should, but this has been like my stance for a while now, right? Like a lot of people are like, Nintendo's weird. They're going to be weird. They're not. It's not going to be backwards compatible, and they are weird, and they are going to be weird. But they need backwards compatibility. Otherwise, you're just, you're shit in the bed. I think.
I think this. So I was started buying cartridges for Switch, and that was like more or less like my final stand of like what I was going to collect. And I have a pretty large, it's like 150 Switch games physical now. And I still buy them every now and again. I keep on, but when I first started getting them, I looked up it and I was like, I think that they're going to keep this. I think that they're going to stay with this. And I had that feeling from the beginning, but it's always like, you never know what Nintendo's going to do. But it would be foolish for them to not do it, especially eShop stuff. eShop is almost like you should anticipate that it should be there, but the ecosystem that Nintendo has developed is large. Now, one thing that I would really hope that Nintendo does, and who knows if they'll do it, is the, PS4 boost, PS5 boost, the Super Switch boost of like your old Switch games are now Super Switched. So that's, a thing that I would hope that they do is like, people that have developers of it, like, oh, we could just get more power out of this. Let's just put, let's recognize that it's a Super Switch. And so that's one thing that I would hope. And personally, I think that a lot of people that would just have a bunch of goodwill that bought into it. So we'll see. But this is more along the lines of how PSSR is boosting PS4 games on PS5 Pro. And that's doing a fairly decent job for free, right? Like, it's just like, hey, ML Engine, do your best here. And it does a decent job for things that doesn't look like the dev stepped in to do anything. So that's the type of stuff that I'm talking about at like a very least, right? Like, just give me a little Nintendo Super Switch boost. That would be cool.
Especially since it's made by NVIDIA. We're assuming it's the next, like NVIDIA's doing the Tegra X7 chip or whatever the hell they're going to call it. If they could throw some DLSS in there, that would be really compelling.
Yeah, you almost anticipate that that's going to be the case. You're going to have that NVIDIA secret sauce, which goes further than every other GPU on the market.
Yeah. A super resolution solution would come virtually for free, just like with PSSR, right? But like what might not come for free is the frame rate, right? So like it's still cheap, but they would need to patch games to go from 30 FPS to 60 FPS based on what we know so far.
Yeah, there's also things like insofar as how muddy things could be in terms of whatever it's running at. So like Mortal Kombat 1 and stuff, who knows how much it could possibly do, right? Like, I don't think anyone's like, oh, you're not doing a good enough job. It's like, oh, hold on. Garbage in, garbage out is still here. But at the same token, my hope is Mortal Kombat 1 would get dev love to, load in other assets for a Super Switch build that it could do in the same time. Just download it, right? Just like, oh, we're running this, but just download the other
$10
parts.
upgrade fee.
Oh man, please no.
Sorry, it's going to happen. I think that you are almost guaranteed that it's going to happen. You can spend $10 to upgrade your Switch games to Super Switch games.
I don't doubt it. Yeah, you also need a Nintendo Online membership as a base. There's lots of prerequisites of things you need. Who knows?
Well, so we're talking about the cartridges being compatible versus the eShop. I think the thing that surprised me the most is that they are continuing Nintendo Switch Online forward. That's the thing that they've always screwed people on, is the virtual console stuff. And when we had virtual console, we were constantly saying, well, we want to have NES Flicks, whereas, we have a subscription and you give us all of the Nintendo games. And then they gave us that and everybody was like, this is stupid. And the reason everybody was mad about it was because they trickled it out over so long. And I was fully anticipating that when this came out, they were going to say, okay, we've got a new Nintendo Switch or a new Nintendo, whatever they're going to call it online. I'm assuming it's going to be called Switch. And we're going to start all over and we're going to do it again. And we'll trickle things out. And it seems like they're not doing that, which is awesome. And it also makes a lot of sense that they're not doing that, because they just brought out that music app that comes with their subscription. Did anybody try that yet?
Yeah.
So I tried it.
What kind of nerds are we?
Well, I'm a nerd, and I was
go.
just curious about it. So I fired it up, and there is one thing that I do like about it, is you can say whatever song you're listening to, you can say, make this song longer. I want to listen to this song for an hour or something. And it'll automatically just do that. And it's kind of cool. Sometimes you can tell where it cuts out and then starts back up again. But video game music, a lot of times background music is made to be looped.
Yeah.
And so they were able to do that, which I thought was kind of cool. I tried it and never loaded it up again, but it does work and it's kind of neat. But anyway, there you have it. Nintendo Switch is going, or Carrie, tell us what it's called again.
It's a Super Switch, Bill.
That's right. The Super Switch, that's going to be compatible with all of your Switch games. So get out there and start buying those cartridges, I guess, if that's something you're up to. Moving on to other Switch news, or not really Switch news, but Palworld news. It's now, we found out exactly which patents it is that Nintendo's suing Palworld for. I know that Rich and I know the answer to this. Russ and Carrie, do you guys know how much they're suing them for?
Like 40,000 or something, right? Like some small number.
Yeah, it's like $40,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but also there's like an injunction. Talk about that, Rich, because I saw you were about to say it.
Yeah, so injunction is the real thing that they're pursuing. There's not much details. It just says, and are seeking an injunction against the game and compensation for a portion of the damages. So the injunction would be the big thing. So it sounds like I don't know if this is like complete, like just not selling until they come to an agreement or something like that, or if there's some sort of middle ground there. I don't know exactly what the law calls for in this case, but that's what they're looking for specifically, is an injunction.
Yeah, and then they're getting sued for 3 patents. One is the one that everybody picked or guessed. It was the one where you throw the ball. And then there's another one that is focused on aiming. And then a third patent that is focused on writing of characters, which is
like what?
Friggin' ridiculous that there's a patent on that. Go after Red Dead Redemption. They ride horses. Go after, go after
literally
anything.
Everything.
Yeah, everything. Oh, there's a mount. World of Warcraft has like 1 billion mounts. You got to pay money for those mounts. Nintendo can sue Blizzard to get them to not have mounts anymore.
Golden Axe.
Right. And, okay, perfect. Golden Axe. Golden Axe has these things, but Golden Axe precludes this patent. But then again, so does Palworld, because these patents were filed after Palworld came out.
Yes. Outrageous.
Yeah. This is not the most insane thing Nintendo has ever done.
It's up there, dude.
It's way up there.
I think there's lots of people, whenever they sued, they were like, well, they really shouldn't have, but I can see why. And this one, it's like, hang on. Just hold on. Let's go back it up a little bit.
Yeah. The whole like catching something and throwing and aiming and stuff, that's just trapping an animal. Like how many other games have had that, Monster Hunter or whatever. Like I don't even know. It's just way too much. It's just crazy.
It
makes
is
no sense.
Really crazy.
Yeah.
I think we just like absolutely speechless, right? Like what can we possibly say outside of like, that doesn't make any sense. This is silly. Please throw this out.
Literally. I would love for them to throw this out.
Do you think it'll get thrown out, Carrie? Or I mean, it's in Japan, so I'm guessing they're screwed.
I don't know. I think that they're going to go through and do the motions and all the other stuff of what has to be done. But I would be like embarrassed if I was the lawyer representing Nintendo. Like, we're really going to do this? Your Honor. I see. It's powerful. Yeah, Your Honor.
Next up, we've got, obviously everyone saw this coming as well. It is the enshittification of all things subscription, where you go into it and you like, this is the deal. This is the deal. And then Darth Vader shows up and says, I'm altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it further. And that's exactly what's happening with GeForce Now, which is, in my opinion, the best way to use cloud gaming. It's crazy how good the quality is, and you get really, really low latency. It feels fantastic when you are playing a GeForce Now game, and the the artifacts are really low and all of that stuff. But now they're going to impose a cap, a 100-hour monthly cap. So, Rich, what do you like? You and I were talking about this a little bit before we started the show. What's your thoughts on this?
So I want to quote my favorite part of this article from Rock Paper Shotgun, where it says, "Would you sign up for any subscription service knowing it's going to become materially worse in a year's time?" And Bill, your reaction to that was, that's every service.
Yes.
Literally any subscription service you can predict will get better, or excuse me, will get worse within a year. And that's precisely what's happened here, and what's going to, I imagine, continue to happen. I think that one of the things that will be interesting to see with the subscription model moving forward, is that I think that the people that play a lot of hours of games are people that are primarily playing online multiplayer games. And so this is going to be the way it was framed before this 100-hour monthly cap and other subscription services, is that the value really is for those people, the online multiplayer people, because they get to play hours and hours of a game or games, and spend some sort of fixed amount. But also that's where the cost is for the provider, right? Because the more that those people are playing those games, that the more they're spending on servers and server costs, while they're only getting a fixed revenue amount. So something had to give in that regard. And I suspect that, increasingly providers are going to be charging by the hour, right? Whether it's 100-hour buckets or whatever, but we're only going to see more of that, I think.
I don't think something had to give. What had to happen is that they have to work out what it should cost. Like, they have to come up with a reasonable cost at the beginning, and then just freaking stick with it. Like, the thing that drives me crazy is we constantly get these subscriptions where they're like, okay, well, that was all great, but now we're changing our price, and there's nothing you can do about it other than cancel. And like, I'm fine with them changing their price for new users, but if I already subscribed at this price, I should be allowed to stay at that price. And they're not, I don't know if they're changing the price or whatever, but now they're putting in that cap of 100 hours. And 100 hours, you're like, I got to be honest, I don't have enough time to play 100 hours of video games in a month. Like, I just don't have enough time for that. So that wouldn't actually bother me. But in the back of my mind, when I go to play, I'm like, oh, I better maximize my fun because this is counting against my time. What were you going to say, Carrie?
Same thing with battery anxiety for handhelds, right?
Yeah.
Like when we got that 80 watt-hour battery, it relieved the battery anxiety. And if you have a limit on you, you have this looming anxiety of, especially when you don't have like a meter. Like, I don't even know if you can see a distinct meter of like how much juice you have left in the hopper on the NVIDIA side. So yeah, I don't know. There is that anxiety. That is a NVIDIA service, even though I have already a bunch of Steam games that it already works with. And obviously I have Game Pass, and you can do Game Pass stuff through it as well, which is wild, just to have like a better experience. I think when you look at it on both ends of those, you see the result of like, xCloud isn't great, but it also runs Series S versions of games, and it also isn't that great. So you get the feeling that Microsoft already did the numbers of like, how do we make Game Pass Ultimate work for xCloud? And the result is it's not super good. So it, where are you? For Stadia, I knew a dude that would purposefully go into Destiny on Stadia to just have a character sitting around doing something. So he just like literally plopped it there, had Stadia wasting GPU, and would do other stuff so that he would use it as some type of mule to do stuff in between stuff. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that you could do that. And because it was like a free-to-play game or something, it was just a weird set of circumstances where how Stadia worked was he was playing this for effectively nothing, and Stadia was just eating the cost of his character just sitting there doing nothing. So I would expect that GeForce Now is some of this built into it, where people are just kind of like they're playing, and then they go, you know what? I'm going to put my controller down. I'm going to walk away for a little while. I don't care if it's running. I pay $20. Meanwhile, NVIDIA is just chugging along with their high-end stuff, streaming out this stuff, and there's no penalty for a person that just kind of doesn't care. It's what is this? The shopping cart theory, where will someone return a shopping cart back to where it needs to go if they don't have to?
Yeah.
And probably NVIDIA is finding like people are just pausing a game, walking away, and forgetting about it. Kind of like, how do you control that? And you can say, oh, idle detection and all this other stuff. But maybe they, do something like, oh, I don't like this idle detection. Let me just press in the analog stick so my camera keeps spinning.
Right.
So like there's things to get around it. That how does NVIDIA get around that? So that's where I would see that it is just probably a shopping cart theory problem.
So this is why I've been not bullish, like very much so not bullish on cloud gaming. Like a lot of people focus on the technology side, like how much latency there is and that there's like a hard barrier to like the latency. But for me, it's that the math doesn't math, right? Like eventually all Microsoft, Google, and NVIDIA will all figure out like it does not make sense mathematically to do this.
You mean financially?
Financially, yes.
Right.
The cost that it costs them, gamers will not pay that money. I don't think so.
Yeah. I think, well, for Game Pass Ultimate, it always made sense to me because it was always a tertiary add-on. Like I never was like, oh, sweet, I get to play on xCloud. It's always been, oh, my save carries over and I'll just play for a little bit and I'll put my save back. And it was never a great experience. And I was just like, this is kind of crappy. Let me go back to where I want to play. But if I had a real gaming phone, I'd probably use it more often. But we're not there yet.
Drink.
But yeah, so I look at what they provided, and it's a good enough service for what the cost is. But I'm with you. I'm with you, Rich. It's like I think a lot of people outside of there were just latency stuff. But to your point, who wants to have a service that's like, if you imagine a future if consoles were only streamed, then we're in deep crap, right? Because at any given moment, they're going to be like, you're getting a crappier experience. You're going to get a time limit experience. There's just a giant list of like, no one wants this. So
literally
how they advertise it, I think that there is a positive sense there from their point of view that if they're going to remember that cloud services, you look at Amazon, AWS's sole reason for existing was, hey, our machines that runs Amazon, they're not busy 100% of the time. How do we get 100% efficiency out of these machines that are running? Ergo AWS. And when they look at that type of stuff, they say, we have a bunch of GPUs in here that are just sitting around. We should probably use those for something. It's just about getting 100% efficiency out of the thing because a lot of the power costs are already pre-baked into them, especially in a lot of data centers. So if all that stuff is pre-baked, you're losing value by not gunning it at 100% all the time. So that's where they're what is it? It's like you're just trying to min-max how much you can get out of your investment, ROI. So I see it, but there's a lot of hurdles that they gotta get across. And we're just seeing a lot of things, just kind of the glass ceiling starting to fracture and break.
Mind you, AWS, there is a small, however meaningful movement of like software developers that are like, you know what? It's not worth it. We're gonna go back to just bare metal.
I've been, so this is like kind of like side talk, like workshop talk. I've been through 3 companies now that have been done. My first company is like, we got to go to AWS. We pivot, move the entire stack, and then it's like, wham, $80,000 monthly bill. And they're like, move back. And I'm like,
back. Oh. Yes.
And then, getting there, all the things that AWS does a lot of things, right? Like people may not be aware, but you can't just like online a service as like, oh, you want a million requests a second? Slow down. You're going to get 100. You want more? Talk to us. And it's like, Can you please up it? And they're like, yes. And then you have to keep on doing that. You keep on like reiterating that. And then all of a sudden the bill gets super crazy. Everyone has to roll back. And then I've done that multiple times in different fashions. I've done that at a web startup. I've done that in a media company that did rendering. So we did rendering on premises and they wanted to move to the cloud. Did all of that. I did it as efficient. Like this is like something I'm super proud of. All right, very quickly. I'm sorry. I don't want to take any time, but
I want it.
Like this is a thing that I did on AWS side. We had it so that it would light up. You press a button on the artist side. An artist would be in this UI that we created. and they would click a button and go down, and then it would shoot off to AWS, right? AWS would say, okay, light up this machine that we have, and it had a prepackaged stuff, so we didn't have to download anything. It would light up, connect to our DC, do a whole bunch of stuff to integrate with our Active Directory, then start connecting to our file server, then start pulling in the job, render it, then send a command to our Active Directory, disconnect, and terminate itself. So like literally we got it to pretty much 100% efficiency of like, do this job and then terminate yourself to just handle costs, right? All of that was still more expensive than just renting servers on-prem. And it's just like, what are we doing? Why are we doing like a bazillion? It's the whole Indiana Jones thing of the guy like swinging around a sword a bunch of times and he just shoots them, right? It's like, what are we doing, guys? Why are we doing all these acrobatics? So it's time and time again, this happens, but the people that are making decisions, just go forward.
Well, you know what I would be curious about with this whole cloud gaming thing and just streaming services in general is like, think about your phone bill, like your cell phone, that you get a plan, you stick with that plan, and generally that plan stays. Even if they move on to new models and stuff, like T-Mobile, I've had the same T-Mobile plan forever. And they're like, hey, you should really upgrade. I'm like, I'm not going to upgrade for twice the price. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I wonder, in the streaming side, and I don't have any knowledge about this, but whether or not there's some sort of legislature that keeps cell phone companies from not being able to move you to a new plan and making it a worse deal, and whether or not something like streaming, like something will come for that. We're like, you know what, Netflix, if somebody gets a deal and they're signed up for a specific service, you got to keep them to that unless they change it, And so I wonder if there's something like that coming in the future and what it will portend for all of these streaming opportunities.
I also think that locks in customers, like in a good way. Like if I were running a service, I'd be like, oh, if I do that, if I make a new way to charge people for GeForce Now or whatever, and Russ doesn't want to upgrade, well, then he is now locked in, and he knows that if he cancels his subscription, he'll never be able to come in at that level, so he'll stay a paying customer. Right. Whereas right now, like we were talking about, we were at a birthday dinner for my father-in-law, and we were talking about, my brother-in-law was like, oh, well, this month I'm subscribing to this thing so I can watch these shows.
That's what
Next
I do.
month I'm going to switch to this one so I can watch these shows. And basically he rotates through a bunch of them in order to save money. And right now there's nothing to stop anybody from doing that. If they would just stop raising the cost on paying customers, then people would be locked in and they'd be like, okay, well, I'm not canceling Netflix. If I cancel it and come back, it's going to cost me this much more every month. And the same thing could be said for Xbox Game Pass or PlayStation, what the hell's it called? PS Plus, or any of these gaming ones as well. Like it's the same thing over and over. And I wish that they would do what Russ is suggesting, where they would pass some kind of legislation to say, knock it off. You're a bunch of jerks. Stop Darth Vadering us.
Not to high horse, but who's they, right? We are they. We need to like, I don't know, like stop killing games, right? Like we have to figure out what the movement is and like start one and do it. I don't necessarily mean literally the four of us on this podcast, but like
let's do it.
All right, Gary's in charge.
The other thing too is that a company could just do this. They could, like Microsoft could come out and say, you know what, new policy. If you got your plan, you're going to have that plan forever. You know what I mean? And all the goodwill that will come from that, I think is pretty good. Another interesting thing about the NVIDIA thing is that they are going to allow you to bank 15 hours that you don't use. And so I wonder if that's going to be cumulative. And so people can just people are going to play less to bank for a rainy day. You know what I mean? And how behavior is going to change. You're going to be like, oh, I'm going to stop at 85 because I want to do 115 next month. And they just keep doing that over and over again. All of a sudden they got 200 hours that month. And then all that anxiety goes away. So there are some ways to potentially game that system. And really 100 hours a month is 3.3 hours a day. Like I don't have that time to be able to play.
Right.
I'll never hit that cap. I mean, I don't even pay for NVIDIA GeForce now. The free tier, like that cap, whatever that has, I never even reached that. So it's fine. You know what I mean? But it would be really interesting to see how behaviors change because of this new rule.
I should say, full disclosure, I'm an NVIDIA ambassador, so like I don't pay for it either. They give me an account for free so that I can test stuff out. Just being transparent with that. Yeah, I do think that Carrie being in charge of this is a great idea. So President Carrie, you're in charge of this. We got to come up with a good name for it. Everybody leave comments down below. What's a good name for, it's not to stop killing games. It's stop something else. Stop Darth Vadering us. I don't know, but whatever it is, use the Force, Carrie. And I guess we're going to move on. And we're going to move on to this thing right here. This is the Anbernic RG P01 controller that I'm not sure if it's purple or brown. It's a really strange color. It's ugly as hell. Russ, talk about your experience with this controller, and we'll talk about the price stuff at the end of this because there's some weirdness with the price. But go ahead.
It's an interesting one. It's very muddied waters when it comes to these budget controllers, and a lot of it is 8-Bit Do's fault.
Just like
the color. I know they like to be called 8-Bit Do, but I always call them 8-Bit Do because it's originally from Nintendo, you know. Anyway, so they came out with the ultimate controller that was like $100 controller back then, and now it's like I think $60. They've dropped it down, but that's the one that has like full functionality Bluetooth version. But then they came out with a bunch of others, like 2.4 gigahertz version, one that only works on Switch and whatnot, and those can be of varying prices. I think $25 for the wired one, $30 for the USB only one, and then there's like a Switch one that's also $30. And so one interesting thing I found is like when I said, okay, this Anbernic is basically a $30 controller. We'll talk about that price later, but it's a $30 controller that functions in the same way as the $60 version of the 8-Bit Do. And I was really surprised to find that all the comments that I got of people saying, no, dude, the 8-Bit Do is $30. And I'm like, well,
What?
no, that's the one that's got the limited functionality because the waters are so muddied because 8-Bit Do has so many different models that people are so confused. They're like, we don't, you know what I mean? They're like, oh no, it's actually $30. I just found it on AliExpress. Like people were like, I got a tweet from a guy like, no, I just found it for less, for $25. I'm like, can you send me a link? And it was the Switch one. You know what I mean? So it's like people aren't understanding the amount of functionality you can get with the controller that you get. And I think that just really muddies the water because there's so many different ways you can connect. And I think that's the crux of the issue with these controllers.
It's the people that are always looking at it as like, no, Steam Deck's $400. It's like, that's the 64 gigabyte model. Like, let's be a little bit realistic here.
Yeah, but otherwise it's a good controller. It does almost identically feel like the 8-Bit Do one, with some of the components feel a little bit cheaper. But otherwise, yeah, it's a pretty good deal for $30.
So Carrie, you also have this, right?
Yeah, my review video went up yesterday morning.
Yeah. So again, price aside, we'll talk about that in a second. What's your thoughts on the controller?
So the analog sticks that they have, I didn't dissect it at all, but it responds in a similar manner to Gillikit's hole-based analog sticks.
Yeah.
It feels very similar, and it also produces the same type of output that Gillikit has. Dead zones are fine. How it comes by default is really good. Like I'm happy with the analog sticks. I'm also happy enough with the D-pad. The D-pad is fine. Anbernic has done a really good job with the D-pad. Hole-based triggers, I don't really care if those are hole-based or not, but it's nice that those work and there's no particular problems. Overall, everything is fine. The only thing that is odd to me, and I'm not the biggest gyro user, is that the gyro output seems odd. And there's almost like if you were to like hook up like a oscilloscope to it, you would like, it almost seems like the signal is like stepped. Like you could, I've in my video, I like zoomed into it and like slowed it down so you can see it. You can see it like move like this when you're moving the gyro around. And it's like, that was odd, and this is just in switch mode to it. So I was like, well, that aside, if you didn't really care too much about gyro, all of the other functions are just fine. Using it for multiple controllers, fine. The price is good for what you get, and the controls are good. I overall, it's fine. I just kind of, my own personal thing, the nitpicks that I personally have is that I feel like they should put the instructions of like what to go into different features, just print that on the controller itself. Don't have that on an instruction manual that I'm never going to have. And I don't want to look it up on a website. And also have a place for the caddy to always be on the device itself. 8BitDo does it on a lot of their things. They did it on their keyboard. I actually did this same thing on my video. So this is, they have a place for it so that you're not going to lose the dongle. And I think that those are nitpicks. They're not big things, like make or break, but it's just small little details that I wish that they would do. Little changes to the analog stick. I would like to see Anbernic take on like an Xbox controller instead of like a Switch Pro controller. Right. Ostensibly, there's going to be a RGPGO2. RG is such a weird thing for them to do. Like back history wise, YLM, Anbernic, they started RG is retro game. Like that's what it means. So like putting RG on the controller, I don't know why they did that, but all right.
Yeah, it's like they're double X. Like, what does that mean? Like they have these weird naming conventions that I'm sure make a lot of sense to them, but to anybody on the outside is like very confused. Okay, let's talk about the price. So I don't know if Rich is aware of this, but you can get this controller for $17, which sounds like a steal up until you have to pay for shipping. How much do you think shipping should cost on something like this, Rich?
No, I do know. So.
Oh, you do? Damn.
But
Okay.
I would think shipping is like $5.
Yeah, no, it's $12. And then I think, Russ, you pointed out that it's not really $12 because when you buy two of them, what happens?
It's $24.
Yeah, so they're hiding the cost of the
I don't know
controller.
Did you guys see what I did this as well, like in my video, which came out yesterday.
Yeah.
You know that there's an extra charge on it, right?
What do you mean?
There's now a worry-free $1 charge.
What does that mean?
Yeah,
I wasn't worried. I'm worried about that.
Yeah, I'm like, what's this? What's that $1 worry-free? Like, what does that do for me? I don't know, but it's there.
Yeah, it's like on their website specifically, not on AliExpress, but on their website they've got this $1 charge.
Darn.
Yeah.
And it just what's the explanation? What does it say? It just says worry free $1.
Yeah, it's like,
can you uncheck it?
No, you can't. You can't have worry.
I'm okay being worried. I don't need to check this not worried box. I'm gonna worry and be happy anyway.
No, you can uncheck it. It looks like worry-free purchase, protect against loss, damage, delay, and offset emissions for 98 cents USD.
I couldn't uncheck it.
Right now, I can uncheck it. I don't know. I'm not gonna check out clearly, but it lets me uncheck it at least.
Okay, maybe I'm totally wrong.
Well, no, maybe they saw your
I was
video and
able to
changed
uncheck
it.
Like in the cart, you can uncheck it. Maybe not in checkout. Maybe that's the issue, the difference.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Shipping doesn't get calculated until you're at checkout, so that's probably what it is.
Well,
I don't know.
It's still funny.
It's like what Indiegogo just started doing. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. Indiegogo, along 6 years ago, it was just a Kickstarter, right?
Yeah.
And then like 3 or 4 years into it, so like 2020, 2021, all of a sudden there's this like, tip the whatever, you know what I mean? And then it would like autofill and just have this value in there. And people are like, GPT, why are you like asking us to like pay more? And it's like, we're not doing that. That's Indiegogo just asking for money. And they're like, oh, like,
yeah,
I don't want to do that.
No.
It's just a weird, bizarre thing to just like, hey, how about money?
Yeah, Powkitty does it too on their website. If you try to order from the thing, they're like, do you want to tip the staff at the same time? I'm like, wait, what's going to happen if I don't tip you guys? You know what I mean? Like, am I not going to get the product on time? It's this weird extra thought, I have to have with checking out. And yeah, I think it was GoFundMe that really kind of started this, because people would do these fundraisers and they'd be like, hey, GoFundMe to have a little thing. And they'd be like, we're not making any money off this. Do you want to give us some of that too? And then you'd have to choose that. And I think that's what started this whole idea.
Pretty soon they're just going to hold labor hostage and be like, yeah, tip us, or they can't go back and see their family.
Right.
I think there's like people outside America that were just like they tip. That's so. What are you tipping them for?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, Americans pay for this. Okay, just put it there. Everything has a tip now, and you go, you're like, wait, why? No.
Yeah.
Right. When you go to the restaurant and it says service charge, Isn't that what my tip is supposed to be? Is the service
how it is
charge?
in
So why
Europe.
are you charging me for the service charge? What'd you say, Russ?
That's how it is in Europe. They have a service charge. That's how, they add in that money. That's great. That's the bottom line. So.
Yeah, but just about any restaurant you go to around where I live, they all do a service charge, and then
And
you're also
still
expected to
expect a
tip.
Right.
Yeah, the ones that already have a gratuity in, like when you have your like 8 or more people, and it's like gratuity automatically included. There's still a tip line there, and they're like, "Hey guys, what are you doing that for?"
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you want to double tip.
It's called the worry-free tip.
Worry free tip. I'll stay worried.
Just the tip. Just the tip.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Bill can't help himself. Everyone, we apologize.
Well, speaking of controllers, the HoriPad for Steam, which is around here someplace, because I'm working on a video for a bunch of different controllers that's coming out, and this controller's in it as well. But the HoriPad for Steam, originally I had read someplace that it was not coming to the United States. And now it is. It's been found on Amazon, and there's links down below if you guys want to check that out. But I know I've already got one because Russ's friend helped me out and shipped it to me from Japan. Rich, you already have one because you had somebody, you eBayed it or whatever.
Yeah.
Russ and Carrie, you guys don't have one, right?
I didn't get one because you said it was terrible.
It's not terrible. It's the triggers are bad and the D-pad is like hurts your fingers. But if you're playing shooters, I think it's perfectly fine. Like Rich, I think, is the person that it is perfect for because he plays a lot of boomer shooters. Have you spent much time with it yet, Rich?
Yeah, and I enjoy it for that on if I'm gonna dock my Steam Deck or something, because that's where I'm playing, or RGLIX, right? So that's where I'm playing shooters a lot of times. But the problem was when I would dock it, I would lose the touch caps. Obviously, I didn't have that on the LIX, but on the Steam Deck, I lose the cap touch whenever I dock it. So having this is extremely helpful, and I know it's different for everybody, right? So some folks are going to use a trigger to turn on gyro or something like that. So if they don't use that, then if they don't use the capacitive touch sticks, then this isn't helpful per se. But for someone like me who's gotten used to that, it's very helpful. So I like it.
I also think something that I didn't really think about until I started working on the video that's coming out. By the time you watch this, it's probably out, but I've got a bunch of controllers here in the NerdNest, and I'm looking at each one and kind of ranking them based on this is good for this kind of game, this is good for that kind of game. But something that I didn't think about until I started making that video was how a lot of controllers that do have gyro will they're just recognized as Xbox controllers unless you turn them into Switch controllers, and then they lose the ability to have analog triggers as well. And all of the extra buttons that you have on controllers, like for instance, the Anbernic has the extra buttons on the back, you can't use them as extra inputs. They're just repeating another input that's on the controller. Whereas with the HoriPad, you have 4 extra buttons that are recognized as extra buttons because Steam recognizes that controller as what it is instead of being emulated as an Xbox or an Xbox 360 controller. So that's actually really useful, and it's not something I thought about until after that video was already out. So I may have a little not apologies, but a little bit of I wasn't wrong about it, but it's not as bad as I thought.
Yeah, I would argue that's why this is important, right? This controller is important. It's not the capacitive touch sticks are important to me, but Steam having a licensed controller at all bridges the gap that we've had so far of exactly what you said, where Switch has one sort of protocol where it has gyro, but it doesn't have analog triggers, and Xbox has a whole other kind of protocol. Up until now, what you've had to do is basically emulate a DualShock or DualSense, if not use a DualShock or DualSense, where you can have most of those functionalities. But with a Steam branded Steam license, they can incorporate that into the software itself and build whatever you want, basically.
Yeah, go ahead. What'd you say?
I should tell Anbernic to make a Steam controller. Like, here, everyone wants this. Go to Valve. Just make it.
Yeah.
Just do it. People love it.
$20
I would
shipping.
prefer it be 8-bit though.
Oh yeah, 8BitDo is my premier one. I feel like 8BitDo as a company, enthusiast-wise for gaming inputs, are fantastic. That they do a really good job and have for so long. That they were the shining example, even years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I remember when I got the SN30 Pro, and I got that in, and I was just like, man, I've had so many garbage third-party controllers that just looked like they should, but felt nothing like they should. And 8BitDo was the first company that not only got it right, but took efforts to make it as best as possible.
Mhm.
And that was the differentiator for me, is like, just using it is like, whoa, this is such a better experience. And that was when I became a big 8BitDo fan. I think you could like still see one of my like early review videos for like 2019 or something that I did for 8BitDo, and I've been a big fan for them for a while. So yeah, I would agree. Like 8BitDo should 100% do a Steam controller and reach out to Valve and make the Steam controller that everyone wants.
Yeah,
Russ,
agree.
I think I heard you and Carrie say something at the same time. What were you going to say?
Oh, I just made a joke about the shipping cost, the Anbernic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of 8BitDo too. Like I had one of their very first controllers. Like they've been around for 11 years now, and so this was probably 8 years ago I got the first
Wow.
one. I just saw it on a Joystick article, I think. If it was Joystick back then, maybe it was Polygon. I can't remember. It's been so long. But yeah, some random article, and they're like, hey, this new controller looks like an NES controller. And so I picked it up, and
Right.
it was good for the time, and like nowadays it sucks. It's like micro USB, the battery's tiny, but yeah, it was kind of neat. That was back when they did call themselves 8BitDo, and so yeah.
All right. Well, there you have it. I think it comes out. Rich and I were talking about this before
December
the show.
16th.
Yeah, December 16th, and it's like $60. I think if you're not playing any games where analog triggers are important to you, then it's definitely a controller you should probably consider. And my video is coming out soon, so make sure that you check that out. And
One
make sure
question
that what'd you say?
I apologize for interrupting.
No,
really
interrupt.
quick, is lizard mode on the Hori Steam Pad?
Oh, so you mean when it like works
Does
on
not detect
Windows?
Steam. Yeah, so if you were connected to Windows and Steam wasn't opened, would it default as to like a mouse and it doesn't? Okay.
I don't.
I
I'd
don't
have
know.
to double check, but I'm pretty sure no. Yeah, I'll double check. But there, and not what you're asking, but there's also a switch for D input. But that's something.
Yeah,
else.
there is a switch on
D
the back.
input.
You just go and switch it over to direct.
Direct input, like the old
I
the old
think so.
API.
Yeah, not
Wow.
I believe not X input, but D input. Yes.
Nice. Go
That
way
whole
back.
D-input
Yeah.
thing that D-input thing is very confusing too, because they, like 8BitDo in particular, confuses Android input with D-input mode all the time. So their Android input, they call D-input mode, but I don't think it's the direct input mode from like the 90s. You know what I mean? I don't know where they're coming up with that. It's again muddied the waters, I think, when it comes to
Right.
controllers.
Actually, I don't know if I can show you guys. Yeah, I still have it here, but my camera's not on autofocus right now. So this is the GPD Win 1. And the GPD Win 1, it has 3 switches on it. It has mouse mode, D input, and X input. So this is the only one that I knew that you could actually switch to all 3 different ways. And then with the Win 2, they just like, no one uses D input. We're just going to go straight to X input. So D input is just a fascinating decision.
It may be like Russ is saying. It may just be called D input, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have
Because
That's a
X
good
input
question.
came out with the Xbox 360, right? Is that when it
yeah.
yeah
debuted? Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so I'm looking at, and I do have autofocus on. I'm looking at this, and it says X, not D,
Oh, okay.
and it says wire only. And I didn't even
Oh.
I only used it with Steam. I don't really play games that are not on Steam on my computer, so like I never even considered like loading up something on Epic Game Store to see how it would run. I kind of wish I had now, because that didn't occur to me. Rich, when you make your video,
Done. I will do
make
it.
sure that you have a chapter on that so people can go find out over at Fan the Deck.
Yeah, that's right.
Pretty close to 100K, right?
I am on the last 100 as of today.
damn.
The last
That
78.
test is going to push you over the edge, man. You got to do it.
The test.
He'll be there by the end of the day.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to do it right now.
All right, congrats.
Yes.
All right. The next thing I'm going to skip over this story about Steamworks. I don't have anything to really say about. They are now announcing when things have kernel side or kernel mode anti-cheat. I thought that they already had that. Like I would always see that in like the little qualifications on the side. I guess they're making it required now.
Yeah. So they had an optional field for describing your anti-cheat. But what they did not have, as far as I know, is specifically you have to say whether or not it's kernel mode. It was just, you just say anti-cheat. So now when you say kernel mode, it's like a bronze-ish badge, as opposed to just like the little blue badge that says what anti-cheat you are.
Do you think that's in response to all of the times where
100,000%? Yeah, this is in response, to all of the, like you were about to say. First was Sony, right? So they had Helldivers 2, but then after Helldivers 2, they started doing the PSN login. So Concord and Ghost of Tsushima Legends, the multiplayer mode, both had whatever anti-cheat they had and was no longer Steam Deck compatible. Then GTA Online, BattleEye, I believe. And then the latest one was Apex Legends, which uses, I believe, easy anti-cheat. Basically flipped the switch to say no more Linux, no more Steam Deck. We're just Windows kernel level only. And so, yeah, I think they probably knew about Apex in advance. And I certainly think this is a response to that. And I think that, they would like people to prefer non-kernel mode anti-cheat, like Valve anti-cheat.
Right. And if they would if people would, I don't know. Well, but everybody always complains about like Team Fortress 2 being this ridiculous, horrible wasteland of bots and cheating and that uses Valve's anti-cheat. So maybe Valve's anti-cheat sucks. I don't know.
Up until recently, it has been terrible. They are now testing something called VACnet 3.0 on Counter-Strike. It's only in some matches, but the result has been a lot more bans. People's impression of it has been mixed, but I think that's mostly because they're not aware that it's like limited. Valve has not rolled it out completely in Counter-Strike 2. It only happens sometimes. So just the fact that the ban numbers have went up seems to be enough evidence to say that what they're doing is working.
Yeah, but what's happening is I'm sure people are in a match that doesn't have the VAC. What did you call it? VAC 3?
Yeah, VACnet 3.0. Yep.
VACnet 3.0, and they're like, "Look at all these friggin' cheaters! So much for VACnet," and it's like giving them a bad name.
Yeah.
So I hope that Valve figures it out and we don't have kernel level stuff, because we don't need another CrowdStrike. And that's when you have access to the kernel. That's the kind of shit that can happen. We don't like that shit. That's bad stuff. Moving on to video game history. Oh no, Ubisoft with $64,000 in-game purchases. Are you guys excited about spending $64,000 on an NFT for your Ubisoft
They're still going?
web? Yeah, they've got a blockchain game called Champion Tactics. Let me get out my glasses so I can read this.
Grimoire
Chronicles. And you don't have to spend $64,000, Carrie. You can just spend $7 if you want, but you can spend $64,000.
That is insane. How many people are playing this game? That's what I want to know. Who's playing the NFT Ubisoft game right now?
Bunch of weird bros, I'm sure.
Yeah, just the crypto bros that are all into Web3 still. It's such a
speechless.
It is such a. I agree.
I was, being there. So in 2016, when Ethereum started getting big, I made my own tokens, right? Like I was like, oh, this seems kind of silly. I'll make Flurbos and Flurbos from Rick and Morty. So I made Flurbos. I made tokens for Flurbos and Schmeckles, the two currencies in Rick and Morty. I made a bunch of tokens in 2016. And now, like back then, it cost me like $10 to make. And I think like if you take a look at the current price of Ethereum, it'll like cost me like a few $100s to make. I'm like, man, that was a dumb decision to do that. But you know, when NFTs came out, I was trying to tell a bunch of people that this is just like going through like what you were actually getting and what it actually meant. And it was not nailing on anybody. And I feel like it's just a bunch of voodoo to a lot of people. Like tech voodoo is what there's this wall of impenetrable understanding for a lot of these people that they're so drinking the Kool-Aid of Web3 and crypto and all that other stuff when they are not foundationally breaking down what it is, that you don't need crypto to have a database. And it's just, I get it that they want to have a public trusted database. I get it. But, you know, just there are things I tried telling people. For me, I think that if some enterprising individual that was in Web3 wanted to do something nice with NFTs, what they should do is tackle Ticketmaster. No one likes Ticketmaster, and an NFT is a receipt. So if you could sell NFTs as a receipt for a ticket to a concert, that could work offline, and you could sell that ticket and have knowledge that whoever's you're buying that ticket and selling that ticket, you can verify it on the blockchain, that you could take on Ticketmaster with NFTs. And that would be an open thing, and you could demolish Ticketmaster what no one likes, and you could actually have something that would be an actual use case for this thing, right? Like, that is something. But for video games, it's like there's some things that people said that just are completely like, they're like, what if you bought an NFT that's a sword, and then you can just have that sword in any game you play? And it's like, that sword doesn't exist. Like, someone has to make that sword everywhere, and they're not going to do that. Like, you're missing the foundational understanding of whatever is going on in your head.
Yeah.
And
yes, for the performance, very heavily dependent on hardware, software that I need. I really want it to depend on a distributed ledger.
Yeah, just one of the slowest, worst databases you could imagine.
Correct, yeah.
Let's use that. Yeah, perfect.
Well, and even better news is that the game is freaking broken as hell. There's apparently one guy who has like 2 accounts. One of them is Schiller11, and his other account is Paulstar111, and he seems to be the only person who anybody ever gets matched with, and he immediately wins the match before the match starts. He currently has over 56,000 matches played in this game. And you are betting when you're playing this game, you are like trying to get real money. So of course people are going to find some way to cheat. Like, we can't deal with cheaters when they're just cheating because they're assholes. Now we got people who are cheating because they can make some money on it.
No kidding.
And that's crazy to me. This stuff needs to go.
100%. I mean, it's like,
100%.
it's an in-app purchase that's an amiibo that you can't have. That's like what I kind of think of it as. You know what I mean? Like, and there's just too many roadblocks for me. I don't understand any of this stuff, but yeah, I don't see that happening. I mean, even like a game I loved, like Destiny or something, you know what I mean? Like, it was so cool to get a cool gun like the Gallahorn or whatever, you know, but like, I'm not gonna pay for a gun that's like that I own, you know, and that stuff. It's there's a line for me, and that's just too much. So,
but then, Russ, you could use that gun in Zelda, because that's how it works. Don't you understand?
Right?
Yeah.
Call of Duty.
It's just the blockchain, guys.
Yeah, it's just the blockchain, whatever the hell that is. I don't really understand that stuff.
A slow database.
A slow database.
Yeah, that's it.
Sure.
That's literally what it is. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. Let's get away from the blockchain, because it's beyond stupid, and all the blockchain people can tell me all the reasons I'm wrong, and I'm going to ignore them because I think they're just grifters. But we've got bad news when it comes to video game preservation. And this comes to us from the Video Game History Foundation. They said today the U.S. Copyright Office announced that it would not support the needs of libraries and archives to increase access to video game history, leaving over 87% of classic games legally inaccessible through any practical means. that's absolutely terrible. There's so many games out there that it's going to be impossible to play legally. And, you know, as we've talked about this on the show a million times, that we all, when you have the opportunity to give money to a publisher in exchange for a video game, that should be the way that you do it, instead of just stealing it off of the internet. Like, all of us have said that many, many times. Now they're making it hard to do. They're making it hard for, you know, people to see this stuff that I consider to be art. Even if you don't consider it to be art, I think a lot of people would consider it to be art, and it's going to be inaccessible unless you want to break the law. And it's ridiculous. Russ, what's your reaction to this?
You know, it's I have a poor understanding of this article. Like, I've read the Video Game History Foundation statement about it, but it's kind of hard to understand what specifically they were asking for and what they didn't get, you know, out of it. But it seems like they basically want, libraries and archives to have like a remote sharing of digital things that are no longer accessible. Basically,
yes,
is what they're
exactly.
like. So you could, like, in the same way that you can borrow a book, kind of thing. And yeah, it's a shame, but I think it all kind of goes back to just the people who are making these decisions and whatnot. Maybe they don't have the same understanding or perspective of what a video game is versus some other part of media or art. You know what I mean? A book is an easy thing to understand. A video game is a little bit more complicated. And I think that's probably what this really comes down to, is an education thing.
What do you think about it, Rich?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it is very much an education thing. And, you know, we liken it to protecting the rights of having protections for books, movies, films, right? Music, things like that. And maybe they think of it as a piece of software, right? And to be fair, it's not just that's not happening in a vacuum, right? Like, corporations that are in charge of the lobbying and things like that are encouraging lawmakers to think of it that way. And so, yeah, I think that's where something like, you know, the Video Game History Foundation sort of petitioning for this for so long is very important. And I hope that they continue efforts like this in the future, and I think they will. But yeah, I think this is a very disappointing ruling, at least for the time being.
And it's not just limited to video games, because, like, isn't there the Guggenheim Project where they're constantly trying to scan books, and like somebody keeps getting in the way of that? Am I remembering that correctly? Like, Google wants to scan all these books, and they keep getting sued that they're not allowed to.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
that sounds plausible.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Carrie?
So I'm of mixed minds on this, and I have to wonder if it's not the landscape of tech today, where how hyper accessible things are. Because I just looked it up real quick, because I'm aware of it, that the Library of Congress actually has, like, the original films, like the actual films themselves that were from Hollywood, and the Library of Congress has them. And whenever they want them, they're like, here you go, take them, do whatever you want, but then bring them back, or we're going to hold them for you. These things are super flammable. We're going to make sure it's in a protected place and safe. And they've been doing that since 1893. And I don't know how, like, long it took someone to come along, because, like, how many motion pictures were around in 1893. But even someone had the wherewithal back then to be like, you know, someone should protect this stuff. Like, we should have someone that's in charge of this. And they did it then. And then somewhere along the line, for video games, it was just like, should we protect this? Like, wait,
Right.
no one cares about that. And it's just like, wait, why? Like, I don't know where the disconnect came from, because in 1893 with films, I don't see how that wasn't seen as some not important thing that could just be dismissed as some carnival thing that you went and watched and forgot about, right? Like, I don't know why the importance was there back then and someone spearheaded that, versus all the people that are passionate about it now and not getting that across the finish line seems counterintuitive. And I understand that companies are just like, you know, especially like Nintendo, they're like, don't let anyone do that, because we're trying to sell new stuff and they could have fun doing that old stuff. And we don't want them to have fun doing old stuff, because if they're having fun, they're not going to buy our new fun.
Yeah, but, like, it's a library. It's like you're borrowing a thing from a library. It's for
Exactly.
research. Like, if let's say that you, and somebody else said this someplace else, so I'm not trying to steal what they said, but I don't remember who said it. But if you're a film student, you go to college for film, you're in film school, they're going to have all these movies at the library that you would go and check out. Like, oh, we gotta talk about, I don't know, The Godfather this week in class. So everybody's homework is to go home and watch The Godfather. And if you don't own it, you can go to the school's library and check it out, and you can watch The Godfather. If you go to video game making school, like, there are places that have that, where you can go to school to become a video game developer. I'm sure that there's some kind of classes where they're looking at old video games and trying to teach the developers of tomorrow, like what roadblocks people ran into in the past. And I know that as technology moves forward, a lot of people look back at old games and they're like, that shit's not important anymore. Why is it that people say that about video games, but they won't say that about film? Like you go back and you're like, we got the Criterion Collection, we've got we've got all these movies, and there are things that people are like, these are the greatest movies of all time. And for video games, it's like, these are the greatest video games of all time, but people don't go back and play them unless they have nostalgia for them often. You know what I mean? It's weird.
It is weird.
I will say that when we were living in Virginia, so almost 10 years ago, my oldest son, he was so into Super Mario 3D World, because you could turn Mario into a cat, and he was like all into cats at the time, And I was not going to buy a console to play one game, but our local library had a Wii U hooked up to a TV, and you could go and check out the hard copy game. You had to keep it in the library, but you could actually go over there and play it. And so I would go over there on the weekends with him sometimes, be like, hey, you got an hour, dude, play some Mario 3D World, turn into a cat, and he loved it. And I didn't have to pay a penny. So that was amazing. Yeah. But that not everyone has access like that, and the digital access to things I think is really important, especially going forward. And so, yeah, it's really just a shame. What I think, maybe the solution will be is time. Because at some point, gamers are going to become lawmakers, and they're going to become judges. You know what I mean?
Right.
And all of a sudden, they're going to be like, wait, you mean to tell me that BioShock game that I loved when I was a kid can no longer be played anywhere? You know what I mean? Like that's the time when maybe some people have a different perspective. Because right now, it's just not happening. And I wonder if it does have to do with just who is making those decisions and where those conflicts of interest are coming from.
Would you kindly pass some laws so that we can play the games that we want to play, or remember the games that we want to play? All right, that's going to be it for this episode of the NerdNest podcast. But don't go anywhere yet, because we got to find out what videos everybody has coming up. Carrie, what videos you got coming, or what did you just put out?
So I put out 2 videos this week, and one was a super long. It's way too dense for most people, and I think that reflects. It's an hour-long video on just the super deep dive on understanding the GPD Duo, but also AMD's new Strix Point. And I also did a video on Anbernic's new controller. I have a video coming out where I actually installed Bazzite on the GPD Duo, specifically for testing. And Bazzite does perform much better in a few different situations over Windows. So the scheduler that is for the CPU is really pulling its weight on Linux side. So there's a lot of things there, especially if you were looking forward to Strix Point on handhelds coming out, like the iNeo 3 just came out. So there's information there that will lead to those that there show some promise. And I have a bunch of other videos I need to do, but right now probably is Bazzite on the GPD Duo on Strix Point is coming out soon.
I want to jump in, and I'm not promising that this will happen, but I would like to in the future have a conversation with Bob, because Bob. For those of you who don't know, friend of the show, Bob Wolf, he put out a video where he was talking about Bazzite, and he was like, it's weird. Every single game that I run gets 1 frame per second higher on Bazzite than it does on Windows. And then the people from Bazzite reached out to him, and they kind of explained why. But I think that it would be good if we could have a conversation about it, and maybe Carrie could explain it, and I'll try to keep my eyes from glazing over when he gets really technical about it, because
you could probably even get a Bazzite engineer on.
Yeah,
that would be cool.
That would be very cool. So
Yeah.
we'll see if we can have that in a future episode. No promises though. It's, getting scheduling to work is always tough. Russ, what videos you got, man?
I am under the crushing weight of anticipation for a Retroid Pocket 5 final review. Like, I actually don't like making big videos like this. I get pinged, I don't know, every 20 minutes from random people on Twitter or wherever and be like, when is your video coming out? And it's like, and when my preview video came out last Sunday, like, I was like, I had a hard time, like, all that pressure just kind of making a video, and then it went gangbusters. So people are like crazy about it. I think it got 300,000 views or something. That's so unexpected for me. I'm like, why do you care what I have to say about this thing? There are so many other good videos out there, So now I'm trying to figure out a review when I already made a 37-minute long impressions video. It's like, what do I have to say now? You know what I mean? Like, the buttons still work, and so so that's what I'm working under that. Yeah, exactly. So I'm working on the weight of that, and I'm planning on releasing it this Sunday as well. And so I'm hoping to make like a 20-minute video. It's like, okay, maybe you watched that other one, maybe you didn't. Here's all the things you need to know. Like, that's kind of where I'm going with this. So we'll see.
Go watch that video after you watch this one. There'll be links down below for all of the videos that we talk about. Rich, what's next?
So Steam Deck news. Valve has had a busy week, right? We talked about some of the things, but game recording went live. Steam Deck's coming to Australia officially November 19th. We talked about HoriPad coming to the US. And 3.6 has had its fair share of problems with a lot of users. So I want to talk about that a bit too. So that should be early next week.
It's like the first time where I'm not going to say it's the first time we've had bugs, but it feels like there were way more bugs this time than there were in the past updates, right?
Yeah, it feels like it's been a while since Stable Channel had this problem. And people are like, isn't that what beta and, experimental channels are for? And they're right. It's problematic that we had this many issues in Stable, but I'm curious to see why that is the case. But either way, Valve came pretty quickly with 3.620, which fixes some of those problems. So hopefully they'll keep up with that.
I wonder if it has... What's that?
I said I'm on 3.7.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say. Is when the Steam Deck first came out, and then they were like, you've got the beta, and then the whatever the one that's before beta, I forget.
Experimental.
Yeah, you were on these different channels for your updates. I think a lot more people, because the features were locked behind that. Going to those other channels, a lot more people were probably using those channels. And then now we have so many of the features that people were kind of asking for that people are like, I'm okay on Stable. I don't need to go on beta. And then they're not getting as much data back.
I think you're right. One quick thing I'll say about this is that I feel like whenever Valve has the opportunity to crowdsource things, they absolutely do. And that means that they don't they don't invest as much in the things that they can avoid crowdsourcing. So I feel like they could invest more in quality assurance outside of crowdsourcing, but they depend a lot on crowdsourcing for QA.
All right. So make sure that you guys go and subscribe to youtube.com/fanthedeck. Get him over that 100,000. It's probably already there by the time you guys see this. Make sure that you check out youtube.com/thefox and youtube.com/retrogamecore. And I've also got a video about controllers coming out that I already mentioned this week. Make sure that you check that one out. It's a big one. It's like 45 minutes long, and it's taken me many hours of work because I suck at this and I had to start over many times
you're doing great, man. Because
of doing dumb things. So go watch that video, watch these guys' videos, subscribe, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.